One phone call from my cousin down in Texas and I was blocked. She left a 5-year-old girl standing at my apartment door, dragging a massive plaid duffel bag. Uncle Ethan, why does your place look like a pigsty? There ain't even room to step. I was on the verge of unemployment and my pockets were emptier than my fridge. The next day, with no other choice, I had to bring her to the office. My toxic manager pointed right at my nose, cursing me out and calling me a worthless piece of trash. Daisy tilted her head and her little voice silenced the entire room. "Mister, did you just drink from a porta potty without wiping your mouth? Your breath stinks." While I was breaking out in a cold sweat, I noticed our company's Ice Queen CEO, a woman who usually looked at people like they were dirt on her shoe, staring at Daisy with her eyes lit up. Even crazier, the terrifying guard dog by the front entrance, a beast that had already bitten 3 security guards, was currently lying belly up at Daisy's feet, letting her ride it like a pony. I was numb. My cousin didn't drop off a relative. She handed me a tiny overlord. "Ethan, you call this a proposal? I wouldn't even line my dog's crate with this garbage." Manager Davis slammed the 50-page document right into my face. The papers scattered across the floor like snow. The looks from my coworkers ranged from pity to schadenfreude, though most just stared with corporate apathy. Into my face. The papers scattered across the floor like snow. The looks from my coworkers ranged from pity to schadenfreude, though most just stared with corporate apathy. I crouched down, picking up the pages one by one. I had stayed up for 3 days straight, surviving on 4 cans of cheap instant coffee to get this proposal done. When I handed it to him at midnight the day before, Davis had patted my shoulder and told me I had a bright future. Today, in front of the investors, the proposal miraculously became his sole brainchild. The second the investor stepped into the elevator, he flipped the script. "What are you staring at? Get back to your desk and redo it. Don't even think about seeing a dime of your bonus this month." I gripped the crumpled papers in my hands. I kept my head down, unable to force a single word out. My chest felt tight and my face burned. I went home feeling like a zombie. Just as I walked in, my phone buzzed. It was my cousin Sarah from Texas. "Ethan, I'm in deep trouble. Daisy, I need to leave Daisy with you for a few days." The background noise on the call was chaotic. Before I could even ask what was going on, she hung up. I tried calling back, disconnected. My stomach dropped. I yanked the front door open. A little girl with pigtails was sitting on a suitcase right next to a giant red and green plaid duffel bag. She took one look at me and pouted. "Uncle Ethan, why does your place look like a pigsty? There ain't even room to step." This was Daisy. I opened my messages. Sarah's profile picture had vanished, replaced by a cold system prompt. "This number is no longer in service." I was officially stuck with her. My apartment was a wreck. I dug through the fridge and only found 2 pieces of bread that were dangerously close to their expiration date. I handed the bread to her, but she completely ignored it. Instead, she reached into that giant duffel bag and pulled out a massive, greasy stick of Texas smoked venison sausage. "Uncle Ethan, this is the good stuff. Here, you take half." She broke off a huge chunk for me, happily gnawing on the smaller piece herself. Watching her, my nose stung. I almost burst into tears right then and there. Late that night, I heard Daisy crying softly in the dark. "I want my mommy." I awkwardly patted her back, my heart aching for the kid. But what was I supposed to do tomorrow? I had to go to work. What would happen to her? Bangs, bangs, bang. The violent pounding on the door made us both jump. It was my landlord, Brenda, a thick-necked woman with a permanent scowl. "Ethan, when are you paying this month's rent? If you're broke, pack your trash and get out." Her shrill voice pierced right through the thin wood of the door. Daisy shrank behind me, her little hands tightly gripping the hem of my shirt. I cracked the door open, practically begging, "Brenda, please, just give me 2 more days. The second my paycheck hits, you'll have it." "Your paycheck at that dead-end job of yours, what's that gonna cover?" Brenda sneered. Suddenly, Daisy popped her head out from behind my legs and grabbed my hand. "Uncle Ethan, don't beg her. Tomorrow, I'm gonna help you make big bucks." I managed a smile that probably looked more like a grimace. Outside, the rain was coming down in sheets. My life felt exactly like the weather, dark, miserable, and completely devoid of hope. The next day, I had no choice but to smuggle Daisy into the office. I tucked her under my desk and repeatedly swore her to absolute silence. I spent the entire morning on edge. Manager Davis's office was just a few yards away, and his hawk-like eyes swept over the bullpen every few minutes. Right around noon, Daisy tugged my pant leg. "Uncle Ethan, I gotta pee." My scalp prickled. The restrooms were on the exact opposite side of the floor. We'd have to walk right past Davis's door. I gritted my teeth, told her to crouch low, and tried to use the filing cabinets as cover while she trailed behind me. We made it 2 steps before Davis's door swung wide open. "Ethan, what the hell are you sneaking around for?" His eyes immediately locked onto Daisy. Davis's face darkened instantly. He stormed over, snatched the file out of my hands, and slammed it onto the floor. "Unbelievable, you think this company is a daycare. Is this an office or a homeless shelter?" His shouting made the entire floor go dead silent. Everyone was watching. My face was on fire. "I'm so sorry, Manager Davis, Shut up, you bring a little bastard into the office and you think you can make excuses." The word bastard felt like a punch to the gut. Behind me, Daisy, who had just been fiddling with her thumbs, froze. She slowly looked up and her entire demeanor shifted. She let go of my hand, marched right up to Davis and looked him up and down. "Mister, you've got a runway receding on your forehead. What are you flexing for?" Her voice was sweet and childish, but the words were pure venom. The office was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Davis was stunned. Daisy didn't let up. "You look pale, sweating like a pig, and you're shaking. You must be doing a lot of shady stuff behind closed doors. I'd highly suggest you check into a psych ward and maybe get your brain scanned while you're at it." Someone couldn't hold it in. Within seconds, the entire bullpen was filled with muffled laughter. Davis's face went from red to a deep, bruised purple. "You little brat, shut your mouth." Enraged, he raised his hand to slap her. My pupils dilated. I didn't even think. I just threw myself forward and pulled Daisy into my arms. His hand didn't hit her, but his momentum shoved me hard. I lost my balance and my lower back slammed directly into the sharp corner of a desk. White-hot pain shot through my spine. I groaned, dropping to my knees. "Uncle Ethan." Daisy screamed. Suddenly, she launched herself like a tiny cannonball and wrapped her arms in a death grip around Davis's leg. "Assault, help, creepy old man hitting kids. Call 911. She screamed at the top of her lungs, her voice echoing through the entire floor. Davis panicked. He tried to shake her off, but she clung to him like a burr. In the midst of the chaos, the sharp, rhythmic clicking of high heels echoed down the hallway. The sound was cold, steady, and commanded instant silence. Everyone froze. At the end of the corridor stood a figure in a pristine white tailored pantsuit. It was her, Victoria Sterling, the CEO of Apex Industries. The moment Victoria appeared, the air left the room. Her stunning face was completely devoid of emotion. "What is going on here?" Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried absolute authority. The second Davis saw her, he stopped fighting Daisy, but he encouraged his niece to verbally assault management and disrupt the entire floor. He threw me right under the bus without skipping a beat. I grabbed the edge of the desk to pull myself up, cold sweat dripping down my face from the pain in my back. I kept my head down. I knew it was over. "I'm sorry, Miss Sterling. I'll pack up and take her home immediately." I was ready to get my cardboard box. My mind was completely blank. But then Daisy let go of Davis's leg and trotted right up to Victoria. Everyone in the office audibly gasped. Victoria Sterling was a known germaphobe. She hated people standing too close, let alone a slightly dusty 5-year-old kid. Daisy didn't care. She tilted her head back and looked Victoria dead in the eye. "Pretty lady, does your tummy hurt?" For the first time since I'd known her, a crack appeared in Victoria's icy facade. She looked genuinely shocked. She did in fact suffer from severe gastric ulcers, relying on heavy medication just to get through the day. And right at that exact moment, she was experiencing a flare-up of sharp, twisting cramps. Nobody in the company knew about this except her private executive assistant. When Victoria didn't answer, Daisy stood on her tiptoes, dug into the pocket of her overalls, and pulled out a slightly squished piece of butterscotch candy wrapped in crinkled cellophane. My mom says people with bitter hearts need candy and hurting tummies need rubs. She pressed the candy directly into Victoria's palm. Victoria looked down at the mangled piece of butterscotch in her hand, then back at the incredibly sincere little girl. By some absolute miracle, she didn't throw it away. Davis was still trying to pile it on. "Miss Sterling, don't let this little con artist fool you. She's..." "Shut up." Victoria's voice cut through the air like a knife. She shot him a glare that could freeze boiling water. "Go to HR, tell them your bonus for this month is cut in half." Davis's smug expression melted off his face. He looked like he'd just swallowed a lemon. I was absolutely floored. I couldn't comprehend this plot twist. Daisy took the opportunity to point a tiny finger at Davis. "Lady, he just threw my Uncle Ethan's papers on the ground. He said he wrote them, but my Uncle Ethan didn't sleep for 3 whole days to make that." Slowly, Victoria shifted her gaze to me. Her eyes were piercing, like she was scanning my soul. My palms were sweating so much I didn't dare meet her gaze. The office was agonizingly quiet. A few seconds later, Victoria looked away, turned on her heel, and delivered her final verdict over her shoulder. "The kid stays. You, my office, were going over your proposal." Before I could even blink, she was gone, leaving me and the entire marketing department staring at each other in disbelief. Did I just get saved? The CEO's penthouse office was aggressively minimalist. Black, white, and gray. Just like Victoria, it was freezing and felt entirely devoid of human life. I stood nervously in front of the massive floor-to-ceiling windows, pitching my proposal. The exact same proposal Davis had stolen and then called garbage. Victoria sat behind her desk, listening without a single shift in expression. Occasionally, she'd interrupt to ask a razor-sharp question, every single one hitting the core of the project. I quickly realized she understood the technical specs vastly better than Davis ever could. Feeling emboldened, I pitched some of my more radical revisions, the ones Davis had refused to even listen to. When I finished, she sat in silence for a long moment. Good concepts, clunky execution. It was a 5-word review delivered with zero warmth. Just as I thought the meeting was over, a massive commotion erupted downstairs, followed by the deep, vicious barking of a dog. My heart shot into my throat. "Daisy." I blurted out an apology to Victoria and sprinted out the door. When I hit the lobby, the sight in front of the glass doors practically short-circuited my brain. Brutus, the company's infamous, terrifying guard dog, was laying on the tile floor, completely docile. He was a massive, purebred German shepherd. Legend had it he'd sent 3 overly confident security guards to the ER, and even Victoria took a wide path around him. But right now, Daisy was sitting squarely on Brutus's back, holding half a hot dog in the air like a triumphant general wielding a sword. Next to her, the head of security was furiously fanning her with a clipboard, grinning like a fool, treating her like royalty. What is happening here?" My voice was shaking. The security captain looked at Daisy with pure reverence. "Ethan, man, your niece is a miracle worker. She just hollered at Brutus with this crazy southern drawl and he sat right down. Then she taught me some Texas line dancing steps to help with my sciatica. I swear to God, I did a 2-step and my lower back popped right into place." I was speechless, using a country accent to hypnotize an attacked dog, curring slipped discs with line dancing. What universe was I living in? Just then, Victoria stepped off the private elevator, with Manager Davis trailing right behind her, looking furious. The second Davis saw the lobby, he practically foamed at the mouth. "Miss Sterling, look at this. I told you that kid is a menace. She's turning the lobby into a circus, riding our security dog like a farm animal." If clients see this, we'll be the laughing stock of the industry. Victoria ignored him. She just stood there, silently watching the little girl laughing in the sunlight, sitting on top of a deadly canine. For a split second, I swear I saw the corners of Victoria's mouth twitch upward. Seeing that Victoria wasn't saying anything, Davis assumed she agreed with him. Puffing up his chest, he marched forward, reaching out to yank Daisy off the dog's back. "You little psycho, get down from there." His hand hadn't even brushed Daisy's overalls when Brutus suddenly exploded upward. The dog let out a demonic roar, lunged, and clamped his massive jaws directly onto Davis's crotch. "H-E-G-G-H-H-H-H," Davis shrieked like a dying pig. The lobby dissolved into total panic. Victoria didn't even blink. She slowly turned her head, looked at me, and spoke with an ice-cold tone that brokered zero argument. "Starting tomorrow, move your desk into the reception area outside my office. Bring the kid with you." Before I could even process that massive promotion, her next words sent a chill down my spine. "Don't misunderstand, I just want to figure out whose kid she actually is." The next day, I actually moved my gear to the executive floor. My new desk sat right outside Victoria's door. It was big enough to land a helicopter on. Daisy got her own VIP lounge, a corner piled high with plush rugs, toys, and snacks that Victoria's executive assistant had frantically bought late last night. It felt like a fever dream. Victoria remained a glacier. She buried herself in mountains of paperwork and barely said 3 words all day. Daisy, however, had zero respect for the corporate hierarchy. "Pretty lady, why's your clothes always black or white? You look like you're heading to a funeral every single day. It's bad luck." Daisy was lying on the rug, her cheeks stuffed with potato chips, casually critiquing the CEO's wardrobe. I nearly fell out of my Herman Miller chair. I lunged over and clamped my hand over her mouth. "Hush." Victoria's pen stopped. She looked up and met Daisy's eyes. I braced myself to be fired again. Instead, Victoria just flatly said, "Don't talk with your mouth full." And that was it. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Living on this floor was going to take years off my life. At noon, the assistant brought Victoria her usual lunch, a sad, unseasoned garden salad and boiled chicken breast. Daisy peeked over the desk and wrinkled her nose in disgust. "Lady, you eat like a rabbit. Are you trying to waste away?" She unzipped her little backpack, pulled out a Tupperware container, and popped the lid like she was revealing a treasure. Inside were 2 cobs of sweet corn and a stack of thick, homemade southern cornbread muffins I had baked that morning. "Try some real food, this'll stick to your ribs." Without waiting for permission, Daisy grabbed a piece of cornbread and shoved it right toward Victoria's mouth. The assistant looked like she was about to faint. Everyone knew Miss Sterling never ate outside food, especially not aggressive, carb-loaded baked goods. I was just about to pull Daisy away when Victoria did the unthinkable. She opened her mouth and took a small bite. The warm, buttery sweetness clearly hit her. She chewed slowly. Her expression didn't change, but her eyes definitely softened. "Thank you." It was the first time I had ever heard her say those words to Daisy. For the next few days, the executive suite was bizarre. Inside the glass office, the icy CEO managed $100 million contracts. Outside, a 5-year-old watched cartoons on an iPad, occasionally letting out a belly laugh. And me, I was stuck in the middle, frantically drafting marketing specs while simultaneously mixing juice boxes and handing out ulcer medication. It was a weirdly domestic rhythm. It almost felt like we were a weird, modern family, until Thursday afternoon. The front desk called up, sounding panicked. "Ethan, get down here right now. There's a woman claiming to be your cousin, and she's trying to force her way past the turnstiles. She's screaming that you kidnapped her baby." My heart crashed. I sprinted to the lobby. There she was, my cousin Sarah, who had ghosted me for half a month. She was sitting on the polished marble floor of the lobby, thrashing around, crying, and putting on a spectacular show. "Where is the justice? I raised my little girl on my own, and my sick, twisted cousin stole her from me. He won't let me see her. He's trying to traffic my baby." She beat her fists against the floor, her hair a rat's nest, her makeup streaked with fake tears. She looked unhinged. A massive crowd of employees had already formed a circle, whispering and pointing at me. Wow, you never know with the quiet ones. Ethan seemed so normal. Psychopath, that's terrifying. No wonder he got suddenly promoted to the executive suite. He's probably using the kid for blackmail. The whispers felt like acid. I saw Manager Davis standing near the back of the crowd, a smug, venomous smirk on his face. He orchestrated this. I pushed my way to the front, furious. Sarah, what the hell are you doing? She leaped off the floor and lunged at me, trying to claw my face. You monster, give me my daughter back. Where did you hide my Daisy? Her nails caught my cheek, leaving a burning scratch. You dumped her at my apartment, deleted your socials, and disconnected your phone. What is this act? I yelled. I lost my phone. I've been searching for you guys for weeks. I've been out of my mind. She was a pathological liar and her performance was Oscar-worthy. He's trying to extort the company. He's using a stolen child to secure his job, Davis shouted from the crowd, fueling the fire. The court of public opinion instantly turned against me. I couldn't talk over the shouting. I had no proof. Just then, a loud, sharp voice rang out from the elevator banks. Sarah, did you learn how to lie from the pigs back on the farm? Daisy had come downstairs, and right behind her, radiating absolute murder, was Victoria Sterling. Every eye in the lobby locked onto the tiny girl. Daisy marched right up to Sarah. She was 3 feet tall but carried the presence of a titan. You said you lost your phone, so explain that Cash App notification to me. Sarah's face completely froze. What Cash App? You're a kid, shut your mouth. Sarah's eyes darted around. She was visibly sweating. Daisy smirked. It was terrifyingly cold for a 5-year-old. The day before you dumped me at Uncle Ethan's, Big Bob sent you $5,000. He paid you to come to the office, make a scene, and say I was some random kid Uncle Ethan had with a stranger. Right? Big Bob, that was Manager Davis's nickname around the water cooler. The lobby gasped. Davis's face turned beet red. He pointed a trembling finger at Daisy. You little liar. Liar! Daisy reached into her overalls and pulled out a sleek digital voice recorder. She hit play. Sarah and Davis's voices echoed crystal clear through the lobby. Once you cause the scene, I'll send the other $5,000. I want him completely ruined. Don't worry, Bob. For $10,000 total, I'll make sure Ethan never works in this town again. The audio was undeniable. The truth dropped like a bomb. Sarah went ghost white and collapsed onto the marble, completely speechless. Davis was practically leaking sweat. He stammered, Miss Sterling, this is AI, it's deep-faked. Victoria didn't even waste a second looking at him. She turned to the head of security. Call the police. Corporate espionage, wire fraud, and defamation. Let's see how he likes federal prison. 2 massive security guards immediately flanked Davis, hauling him away as his knees gave out. Only then did Victoria look down at Sarah. Sarah violently flinched. She scrambled forward on her knees, trying to grab Daisy's legs. Daisy, baby, Mommy's so sorry. They made me do it. Come back to Texas with Mommy. Daisy took a large step back, completely avoiding her grasp. She looked at her mother. There was no anger in her eyes, just a terrifying, adult-level disappointment. You're not my mom. The second you took $5,000 to hurt my family, you stopped being my mom. My mom wouldn't lock me in a trailer for 2 days straight just to go play the slot machines. My mom wouldn't burn my hand with hot water because she lost a bet. And my mom definitely wouldn't treat me like property to be bought and sold. With every sentence, Sarah shrank closer to the floor. Finally, Daisy looked up at me. Her eyes were shining. I only have Uncle Ethan. He bakes me cornbread. He wakes up at night to tuck me in. And he took a hit and hurt his back just to protect me from a bad man. Sarah, as of today, we are done. A 5-year-old delivered the absolute final blow. Sarah broke down into ugly, wailing sobs. Victoria gave a curt wave of her hand and security dragged Sarah out the sliding doors. The circus was over. I dropped to one knee and pulled Daisy into a crushing hug, tears finally spilling over my eyelashes. My brave little girl had been through hell. Victoria stood quietly watching us. After a long time, she softly said, "Bring her to my place for dinner tonight." It was an abrupt invitation, but it made my chest feel incredibly warm. Victoria's mansion was somehow even colder than her office. It was a massive, ultra-modern estate, aggressively luxurious but entirely devoid of life. No photos, no clutter, just an empty museum. It was Daisy's first time there, but she owned the place. She sprinted around the massive living room, touching the sculptures and looking under the imported rugs. Victoria had changed out of her power suit into a soft, oversized sweater and sweatpants. She looked less like a weapon and more human. She actually cooked. The food was objectively terrible, but Daisy and I ate every single bite. After dinner, Daisy crashed hard, falling asleep on the massive velvet sofa. I draped a throw blanket over her and walked out to the patio to join Victoria. She did something completely out of character. She uncorked a bottle of red wine and poured us both a glass. When I was a kid, I was home alone constantly. My parents were obsessed with building the company. They hired the most expensive nannies, bought me the most expensive toys, but they never once sat down and ate dinner with me. This was the very first time she had ever mentioned her personal life. I stayed totally silent. This house is huge, but most of the time I'm the only breathing thing in it. I hate noise. I hate crowds. Because whenever the noise stops, the silence feels 10 times heavier. She looked fragile. For the first time, I realized the Ice Queen was just incredibly lonely. She drank fast. Her pale cheeks flushed pink and her eyes grew hazy. She pointed through the glass doors at Daisy, who was drooling on a silk pillow, and smiled. "She's loud, she's a headache. She has terrible manners, and she got potato chip crumbs all over my Italian sofa. But with her here, this house actually feels alive." A single tear slipped down her cheek. My chest tightened. Without thinking, I reached out to wipe the tear away. Before my thumb could even touch her skin, she leaned forward. Smelling of rich red wine and expensive perfume, she pressed her lips against mine. My brain completely flatlined. The kiss was feather-light, tasting like Cabernet and salt. She pulled back almost instantly, looking at me with glazed eyes. Right at that moment, Daisy sat up on the couch, rubbing her eyes sleepily. "Uncle Ethan, the pretty lady is crying. Ain't you gonna give her a smooch to make it better?" Victoria's entire face turned violently crimson. She shot up from her chair, blurted out, "I'm tired," and practically sprinted up the glass staircase to her bedroom. I stood there touching my lips. I could still feel the warmth. My mind was a complete mess. The next morning at the office, the tension between us was suffocating. She was back to full CEO mode, avoiding eye contact while giving me tasks. I felt like an awkward teenager who didn't know what to do with his hands. The unbearable awkwardness was thankfully shattered by a massive corporate crisis. Apex Industries' biggest pitch of the quarter was derailed. Our core proposal, a project we spent 3 months building, had been perfectly duplicated and patented by our biggest rival firm. All our work was dead. The company was facing a multi-million-dollar disaster. The boardroom was dead silent. All the VPs looked ready to jump out the window. "We have one option," Victoria said, breaking the silence. "The final pitch is in 3 days. We build a completely new, superior architecture model by then, or we lose the account entirely." 3 days, the room groaned. A master pitch took months. 3 days was a suicide mission. I looked at Victoria's stressed face and made a reckless decision. "Ms. Sterling, I have an entirely different conceptual angle. It's rough, but we could pivot." Every head snapped toward me. It was a radical branch I had mapped out during the original design phase. Davis had killed it immediately, but I had kept drawing the blueprints in my spare time. For the next 72 hours, the core team essentially lived in the office. Victoria stayed in the trenches with us, redlining prints and drinking terrible coffee. Daisy became our mascot. She handed out water bottles, organized the takeout boxes, and sang off-key country songs to keep morale up. On the day of the massive pitch, I stood at the podium in the hotel conference center. Sitting directly across the aisle, representing the rival firm, was manager Davis. He had immediately jumped ship and used our stolen proposal to secure a director role at the competitor. He smirked at me, radiating absolute arrogance. I took a breath and began clicking through my slides. Halfway through the presentation, the screen violently flashed and went black. The projector was dead. The IT guys scrambled, but it was totally fried. Without visuals, an architectural pitch is useless. Davis was grinning from ear to ear in the front row. Sabotage. I started sweating, my mind racing for a way to describe the schematics verbally. Suddenly, a tiny, confident voice echoed across the quiet ballroom. Uncle Ethan said that right there and up there are all drawn wrong. Daisy had wandered right up to the front, pointing a little finger squarely at the giant printed boards Davis's team had left on easels, the stolen blueprints. The room fell silent. Davis panicked and stood up. Who let a child in here? Security, remove her. Daisy completely ignored him. She turned to the panel of judges. Your weight-bearing numbers are completely wrong. If you build that wall there, the whole building's gonna fall over when the wind blows. My Uncle Ethan's drawings didn't look like that at all. The judges frowned. The head judge, a renowned structural engineer, stood up, walked over to Davis's board, and pulled out an iPad to run the calculations. 3 minutes later, he looked up, his face grim. The child is right. This entire structural integrity is flawed. It's a massive oversight. The ballroom went deathly quiet. All the blood drained from Davis's face. He never realized that the proposal he stole was the flawed version. That's impossible, Davis stammered. I grabbed the mic. My voice was rock solid. Mr. Davis, you stole our discarded alpha drafts. What Apex Industries brought today is our finalized, structurally perfect Bravo model. I unzipped my portfolio and handed hard copy packets directly to the judges. It was 3 days of blood, sweat, and absolute perfection. The judges flipped through the pages, nodding aggressively. It was a massacre. When the pitch ended, Victoria officially announced we had secured the contract. Our team went nuclear. I was literally lifted into the air by 2 account managers. When we returned to the Apex lobby, Davis was trying to sneak out the side door with a cardboard box. He was cut off by Brutus. The entire security team had formed a wall blocking the exits, and leading the pack, sitting on the giant dog, was Daisy. Where do you think you're going, Big Bob? Davis's legs were literally shaking. I walked out of the crowd and stood right in front of him. For the first time, I looked him dead in the eye. You stole my work, you threatened my livelihood, you humiliated me, and you tried to weaponize a child to ruin my life. With every word, I took a step forward. He backed up until he hit the glass door. Time to pay the tab. I pulled my arm back and slapped him across the face as hard as I physically could. The crack echoed off the marble ceiling. That's for my 3 sleepless nights and for my pride. I didn't stop. I swung my left hand and backhanded him across the other cheek. And that one's from my Uncle Ethan. Daisy screamed from the sidelines, absolutely hyping me up. Davis collapsed onto the floor, clutching his face, completely broken. Looking at him groveling there, years of corporate abuse finally evaporated from my chest. Ethan was no longer a doormat. After the massive win, I was promoted to Director of Project Management. But things with Victoria were weird. After the kiss, the tension was unbearable. We were hovering right on the edge, but neither of us had the guts to make the jump. A week later, my uncle called from Texas. He said he had lined up a blind date for me with a nice local girl and told me to bring Daisy home to visit. I was exhausted. I figured stepping away from Apex and Victoria might be the clean break we both needed. I put my 2 weeks' notice on her desk. Victoria stared at the letter, said and went back to typing. She didn't ask why. She didn't try to stop me. My heart felt hollow. On my last day, I stood on the sidewalk outside the Apex building with my suitcase and Daisy, waiting for our Uber to the airport. Half the department came down to say goodbye. I looked up at the penthouse suite one last time, feeling sick to my stomach. Uncle Ethan, are we really going back to Texas so you can go on a blind date? Daisy tugged my sleeve. Yeah, kiddo, but what about the pretty lady? Don't you want her to come with us? I forced a bitter laugh and ruffled her hair. Just as the Uber pulled up, the screech of tires echoed down the block. A sleek black Rolls-Royce Phantom drifted around the corner and aggressively blocked the street right in front of us. The driver's door popped open. Victoria stepped out. She was wearing a stunning blood-red evening gown and 5-inch stilettos. She looked absolutely lethal. She marched straight past the crowd, grabbed my suitcase and hurled it onto the sidewalk. Ethan, you think you can just leave? Her voice was shaking. I was totally stunned. I resigned. I declined it. She stepped directly into my space. Victoria, what are you doing? I'm telling you, she took a ragged breath, completely dropping the CEO mask in front of 50 employees. If you get on that plane, I will buy the entire state of Texas just to make sure you can never hide from me. The street went dead silent. Then, the entire marketing department erupted into cheers and catcalls. Daisy was clapping her hands so hard she was practically vibrating. Uncle Ethan, kiss her, kiss her. I looked at Victoria. She was terrified, exposed, and absolutely beautiful. I couldn't take it anymore. I dropped my bag, closed the distance, and wrapped my arms around her waist, pulling her flush against me. I'm not going anywhere, I whispered into her hair, ever. 1 year later, our wedding was held on a massive lawn overlooking the ocean, sun, salt air, and everyone we cared about. We didn't have a traditional wedding party, just one ring bearer. When the orchestra started playing, Brutus the German Shepherd, wearing a massive bow tie, trotted down the aisle. Riding on his back was Daisy. She had a little velvet box in her hands. The crowd was losing their minds laughing. Daisy slid off the dog, handed me the rings, and then tapped the officiant's microphone. Excuse me, check, check. Hi, everyone. Today, my Uncle Ethan and my new Aunt Victoria are getting hitched, and as the person who basically set them up, I have a few words. She paused, mimicking Victoria's CEO boardroom posture. Love is kinda like slow cooking a massive pot of Texas chili. You gotta let it simmer till it's perfect. My Uncle Ethan is the beef and Aunt Victoria is the spice, and they are officially cooked. The guests howled with laughter. Victoria and I looked at each other, completely helpless against this kid. Lastly, to all the single losers in the crowd today, don't worry. If you need a matchmaker, come see me at the reception. My rates are reasonable and I accept Cash App. She took a theatrical bow. I gently took the mic from her, grabbed Victoria's hand, and slid the ring onto her finger. Victoria Sterling, do you want to do this forever? Just me, you, and the kid. Her eyes were shining. She nodded hard. Forever. I leaned down and kissed my wife. The sun was warm. The breeze was perfect. I had the woman I loved and the craziest little kid in the world right beside me. Life was finally good. End.